Hey guys, thanks for joining today. Today we're just going to go over a new coach's training that's going to cover 14 basic things that we need to cover as a coaching staff to be able to not only protect yourself, but protect the school from liability. So we'll jump right into this training, starting with number one. All right, number one is the foundation of what we do is our safety. So that happens when problems arise, when no planning occurs, poor planning occurs, or plans are not followed. All right, so we will meet before the season. We'll set up a plan, and it's on you to kind of make sure that those plans go accordingly. All right. So one thing we want to look at how easily things can go wrong is this case Gill versus Tempest. In this case, this little girl was was injured and taken to the training room and sat down and waited for the trainer, who wasn't there at the time. And that little girl happened to fall and bust her face and had some extensive damage. So they had to take her to the hospital, and she sued the school and ended up losing liability that way. So something as simple as just setting her aside can get you in trouble. We have to really supervise that kid to make sure that they're okay. Which kind of brings us into our next topic of supervision. All right. We have to be around, we have to be present. All right. Our presence is super important, not only for the physical, but the behavior part of what we do. So that's super important. And also the way we structure practice and minimize downtime and things like that. And also keep the maturity level of one versus the other against each other. All right. So a reason things are so important on why we have this supervision was this one case that was brought to my attention, Karate versus Broncombe. This case was brought to light as Karate was killed in an accident as Broncombe County let their kids drive an ATV down a cart path and actually hit a group of kids, and this particular kid got killed. And so, they sued for lack of supervision, and that was what really drove home the case, is they didn't have adequate supervision. The third thing we have to do is the selection and training of coaches. All right, we are responsible for coaching, or I'm responsible for training you and getting you ready to coach your sport. All right. So we have 5 criteria that we need to follow, and that will really help us stick out of litigation. All right, and that is the educational background of the coach. How prepared are you? Do you have your bachelor's? Are you highly qualified within our educational system? All right, has the relevant sport-specific background of the person in question been carefully assessed? Are you experienced with football? If you're a football coach, basketball, et cetera, or at least the kinetics of the sport. Was reasonable care exercised in the initial process orientation of this personnel? When was it taken into consideration? And you wouldn't be in that position if I didn't do that already. And did the school confirm that all required certifications have been completed? And we do that even before we start your season. We have that meeting where we discuss that paperwork. So as far as this is concerned, there was a fight in Cross versus Wooded County School where a coach actually antagonized the fight and started the fight. When the fight got out of hand, the coach let it go on, and the kid was severely injured during this fight. So and he didn't even intervene. He just allowed the kid to have some severe injuries. Just keep that in mind, man. We don't want to be that guy. No one wants to be that guy. So I don't even want those guys on my coaching staff. So let's use proper judgment in that deal. All right, number 4 is pretty obvious: the proper technique and equipment. All right, so we're going to hear the training and safety practices. All right, so there are 4 factors that we look for. Are they qualified instructors? Was there proper technique and instructions, or was it adequate safety instructions, or was there a thorough risk instructions? Because they do carry some risk that is involved, but we have to make sure that we have proper technique, proper equipment provided to our kiddos. So that is something we'll be looking for. That we need to do that. All right, and some things that we need to do with proper technique and equipment and teaching technique is be aware of what we're doing. This case, Carlos versus the Lake Community High School, had a kid that was in diving practice, and the coach ran out of space and had him dive into the shallow end of the pool. Well, in doing so, the kid broke his neck and had some severe spinal injuries to where he had some lifelong effects from doing so in that small adjustment the coach made, and not necessarily hurt the kid, but to try to get a rep done at the expense of the kid's safety, which is not what we're trying to do. All right, so next one we have, all right, is our warnings, and warning signs are all over the place, and we also have so they need to be had a completion by the students and the parents, and also need to have an assumption of risk. Now, assumption of risk is huge in this deal because a certain player, as long as things are done correctly and what we discussed before a season, each kid takes an assumption of risk. All right, which means that they have some liability in the issue, because some sports come with higher risks, such as football or lacrosse. May cause a head injury or some type of traumatic injury in some severe cases. And they do understand that prior to the season. We need to make sure that they understand those risks going into the season, and have those warnings and those talks with those people, with our parents and our students, more in particular. So these also need to be verbalized in our preseason meeting, before our season meetings, and then also we're going to have a written contract understanding we understand the assumption of risk before we're allowed to participate in that particular sport. All right. So in this particular case, Duffy versus Sulphur High, there was a case where a young man was playing hockey, Duffy in particular, and and someone shot a puck and it hit him in the head when he was in his gear, got hit in the head and still caused some type of some head injury. Well, the parents tried to sue, but the courts eventually realized that or ruled that he had the assumption of risk and nothing was done wrong by the school. He just had, sometimes if you're playing hockey, a puck may hit you and cause that type of damage. That's the sort of type of risk that you take. All right, moving forward, number 7 is a safe playing environment. All right, so we are sanctioned through the national operating system through those types of environments. And so typically what they look for is a setup of the environment. All right, are we inspecting the environment? Is there maintenance being properly done through the facility? Compliance, are we complying with local, state, and building codes? On the protection of non-participant third parties of the environment, such as spectators or officials, are they safe as well? All right, and then planning the implementation of event security measures, so such as a security guard or an administrator on duty. So in Griggsville, there was a kid that was participating in a sport similar to the slide we have there, and he hurt his ankle and was hurting a rut pretty badly. And his parents sued the school because they allowed him to play in an unsafe, safe environment, and actually won that case. So that is something we need to be aware of. Is just take a sweep of that gym or that field, whatever your case may be, and just make sure that place is safe before we get our kids on those fields. All right, so protective athletic equipment is exactly what it sounds like. We have a commission that oversees some of our equipment to make sure that those are properly calibrated and make sure that they're still safe. Now, some things have a 10-year lifespan, which is regulated. All right, so we have to make sure that all equipment is clean and all properly fit each athlete. So we don't want big helmets on our catcher or catching gear that doesn't fit, or catchers or mitts that don't work or are ineffective, or shoes that have holes in them, or things like that. We want our stuff to be nice and keep our kids safe. All right. So some of the things that arise in court are they properly used? All right, for that activity. The criteria for distribution, was that taken into consideration? Did you allow the kid instruction on how to use that piece of equipment, such as a football helmet? They have a little slides you need to get fitted correctly, and then enforcement of consistent use. Are you constantly drilling those home to make sure that they know those? All right. So also in the so those help in that situation. All right, to keeping that. All right. So our protective athletic equipment. 8 is evaluation of conditioning under preparedness. So this is before we start, are we ready to go? Are we safe? All right, these are deal with physicals or any type of medical screening, rank 1 information. And we have to know about the condition of the athletes. And we're going to follow our doctors and our trainers as they're the medical orders, right? We're not going to try to oversee them as a coach who's not the professional. We're not going to try to make professional judgments. So we're going to follow what our doctors say. All right. So the next one is evaluation of injuries. We need to be prepared for all of our injuries that happen. All right. And again, we're going to say that our medical professionals are the ones who are making those medical decisions, and we're going to follow those as such. All right, safety first is a competition is second, right? We're going to keep our kids first and then worry about winning that next. But we're going to err on the side of caution for our kids. So have everybody prepared to go, because if they're getting injured, we need to have others ready to go. All right, and make sure that these kids are safe in that situations. All right. All right, so matching athletes, that comes up a lot. If we look at this picture, we see Muggsy Bogues versus George Marathon in this picture, which is a small guy versus a small guy, but that's the NBA. All right, in our high school athletics and our middle school athletics, we need to take those sides more into consideration. So we don't want to match up a varsity team versus a freshman team and set ourselves up for failure and injury in that situation. All right, so we need to keep those in mind. One example I'd like to bring to your attention is a Schnard versus Garrard Board of Education, where one of the girls basketball coaches was coaching and wanted his girls to toughen up, and brought in some of his older male basketball players. One in particular, she was about 5'8", 140 pounds, was going up against a young man who was 6'5", 260. And that eventually caused an injury for the young lady. And not only was he not part of the school, he was a graduated player from the school, which caused a problem with litigation, with them getting hurt. So take those things into consideration. Be smart, right? That's not being smart. Bringing grown men to go play against basketball is not a smart move. All right. So make smart decisions. All right. So immediate assistance, we need to be able to help. We went through that in our first aid training. We need to render aid and be prepared in a medical crisis. All right. So we need to be there for our kiddos. All right. So if one situation, Halper versus Richmond, this particular coach tried to straighten out a broken leg that Halper had and actually did more damage. Well, he tried to get the kid to compete in wrestling in another match, and the kid really severely hurt himself. So not only did it leave Halper Burton Community College open for litigation and to get sued, but also that coach lost his coaching certificate. So that's why I wanted to add that one in here, so you can see that it's not a laughing matter. It is something very serious. All right, so we all need to have an emergency response plan, and we will have those. We do have those at the school, and we need to all have things like the head coaches are going to be mandated to have a phone in their pocket, and first aid kit, and other responses are needed as possible. So one thing we need to talk about is a Saline versus Upper Lake Union High School. One of these coaches, a kid actually broke his leg in competition, and they left him there with a broken leg, and they left home for the evening. And this kid tried to get to a payphone and was injured even more. So they opened themselves up to get sued there. All right, so be careful, man. Make good decisions. All right, so we transportate kids under the in loco, which is in loco parentis, which is in absence of parents, and we have 4 ways to transport kids that we're going to transport in. All right, we're going to take for charter buses. All right, we can drive our school buses. All right, we can drive buses that are owned by the school, and then we can parents can drive if we're allowed that student. They're covered by the minimum amount of insurance needed. All right. So one thing that was a bad idea for safe transportation is it was Clemens versus Griffin. All right, the school let a student drive. A baseball player drive the bus and really injured the bus. The passengers of that bus were wrecked. Not only was he not allowed to drive, he was the van was in really, really poor condition. So they all were injured in that case. All right, which opened them up to get sued, which they did, and the other team, and they won. All right, so number 14 is full and accurate disclosure. This is what we're talking about when we're talking about minimum insurance. All right, we need the insurance to participate and have the minimum amount of coverage. That is what that is in a nutshell. All right, so this is going to conclude our video. I mean, our training for the day. So if you have any questions, just let me know.